Trade signal machine. Trade like a machine. Invest like a pro.
Thank you for tuning in. My name's Martyn Tinsley, founder of Trade Signal Machine. I have a really great interview for you today. I had the pleasure earlier on of talking with Juan Colón, the CEO of Darwinex. Amongst other things, Juan shares some great insights that Darwinex have been able to deduce from the vast quantities of data that they now hold. That's data regarding trader behaviour and trading systems. They can use this real-world data and intelligence to identify what makes a successful trader. But also he reveals the one major reason why traders fail. He'll also share some details of what the most successful investors on the platform are doing and how they're choosing what to invest in. Now, you might have already heard Juan speak as part of his regular webinars, but today it's a little bit different. In addition to what I've already mentioned, we'll be finding out more about Juan the person. We'll be finding out about his background and what led him to start Darwinex. In particular, I'll be asking him about what drives him in his quest to bring evolution to the financial services market. And so, without further delay, here's my interview with Juan, recorded earlier today. Hello Juan, it's an absolute pleasure to be interviewing you today. We've known each other now for a few years, and I've had the pleasure of seeing you and your team take Darwinex to where it is today. But this is the first time I've had the opportunity to interview you, so welcome.
Well, thank you, Martyn. You're too kind with that kind of introduction. I'm almost paling now. Thank you for having us.
No, it's my pleasure, Juan. So, as I said in my introduction, I'm sure that many of the listeners today will have already heard you speak on numerous webinars that you've hosted about your platform, the algorithms that you use, and so on. But what we probably don't know quite as much about is Juan Colón, the person. And so to start off, I think it'd be really interesting for the listeners to know a little bit about your background, what you did before you started Darwinex.
Okay, well, first things first, I guess I shall start with my age. I'm 39 years old, about to turn 40 tomorrow. Actually, it's a good day for you to have this interview, Martyn.
Happy birthday for tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a father of 4, which is probably the most important thing I've done to date. And what I did before starting Darwinex was really to study economics. I've always loved the interaction of people and the markets. So I think this was 1994, started to do my degree in Spain. Then that was kind of too light touch. So I ended up doing a Master's of Science at the London School of Economics, where I met my wife up until 2000. And then I stayed on in London working for a consulting company called Oliver Wyman & Company, which works exclusively with banks. And that was kind of quite appealing to me. It was my way to close in on having economics and financial services speaking to each other. It had also the benefit that I got to travel a whole lot and work for actually pretty much every European bank out there, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that was nice in the sense that I learned a lot. It was also quite tiring, so I kind of racked up air miles at a rate I would have never dreamt of. And then after that, I gradually started to move away from thinking of consulting, where you say what people should do, and more into trying to do stuff. Up until 2011, where my brother and I came together and founded what is today Darwinex, was then TradeSight. So I think that in a nutshell summarizes 15 or 16 years of a professional career.
So a wealth of experience, and it was really interesting to find out, a summary of your career there and your background. It sounds as though you had what was really quite a successful career in financial services. So what was it that made you give all of that up and start Darwinex?
Right, well, that's quite a question, right? So it really depends on how you define success, right? And by the end of my consulting career, I was making substantially more than I'm making now, but I still never really felt like the motivation was coming from within. It was always about, I should be doing this to progress and make partner and this and that and the other. But there weren't. I mean, there were times on a Sunday evening where I just literally felt sick. I didn't want to do what I was doing. It was partly out of nerves, partly out of doing something which I felt wasn't entirely fulfilling, in the sense that I felt at times like I did very, very sophisticated Excel sheets that I and a couple of other guys really understood, but didn't really have an impact on how the world run. That was kind of the intrinsic motivation. Then I'm also the girl that I met in '98 happened to become a Spanish diplomat, and juggling her career and mine involved basically me being able to move around quite a bit as well, because that's what she does for a living. And so things came together, and at some point my brother, who's 20 months my younger, had an idea, and he's a trader. He's the trader behind the whole of Darwinex, and to me there was a shocking revelation there, and that's that he had been working quite hard to come up with a successful strategy. Obviously, not everything was successes, because he lost me and my father a bunch of money before he got to the stage where he was investable. But he had been profitable for 3 or 4 years, and was having a very, very hard time in raising investor capital. And basically, we just thought this needn't be. So what was sort of an opportunistic thing in coming together made me gradually realize, the more and more I knew about the sector, that there was a huge opportunity, a lot of talent out there that was just being neglected for traders' loss. Obviously, it's not nice to have a nice strategy and be trading 5 peanuts instead of the real bucks that it deserves. And also another profound insight, which strikes me as well, and that's the financial services industry is quite dominated by the middlemen who make things happen, but don't really give that much back to the people that make it happen, and be it the managers who say manage the money, but more importantly, say my grandmother who like to invest her money in a nice opportunity, but she never gets those opportunities offered, because those really always go to the wealthy.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's when, of course, this is 2011, 2012. So what is today the fintech boom was sort of emerging at the time, and on we went. I basically got all my bosses lined up in a presentation tour, and we raised some money on a PowerPoint deck that was atrocious, I must say. And that was then, and up to now.
Okay, wow, that's really interesting. I don't think there are many people out there who would disagree with your motives for starting the company. So that's really interesting to hear. I suppose one of the things I'm interested in finding out, Juan, is have you actually faced any major issues along the way, and what have they been, or what they still are? What are the main challenges that you faced while getting Darwinex off the ground to where it is today?
Okay. Oh well. I just don't know where to start. I mean, one thing is, when you set up a startup, I mean, a startup is really an emotional roller coaster. I mean, I think it's only when you're in it that you start to understand the magnitude of the phrase. It sounds like an empty thing, but really, like, it could be on a Monday you're down, on Tuesday you're up, and on Wednesday morning you're on a high, and Wednesday afternoon you're on a low. So you just get to a point where you don't really take it all that seriously, but there are challenges every day. There will be challenges every day, because we're talking about a company that was 2 guys in 2011, and it's like 34 today.
Wow. Okay.
For me personally, so one thing is the internalization, that everything costs about twice as money and twice as much time as you think it's going to cost to make. So you have to build that into your plans and get to a point. And that's actually if you do things well, right? There's a lot of people who estimate something and it just doesn't happen, regardless of money and time. So that's, I think, if you do things okay. Then there's the technical aspect of it. If for a non-technical guy like me, you're speaking to all these guys, and they start speaking. I mean, it all takes a life of its own, right? And they start speaking about stuff that you understand that from a user standpoint. But I mean, and I'm a technical guy, but it gets to a point where you just lose control as to what's going on in the background. So that is a challenge, a mental challenge for one of the guys running this. And beyond that, it's really, I think it's two things. So one is the sheer lack of trust in the market. The retail financial market is so rigged that when you say you aim to do something, like, to change things for the good, people just look at you and either don't trust you, B, they think you're a loony, or and C, they're just so busy trying to kind of make short-term money that they just kind of come and go very quickly. And that leaves us with this, what I call the chicken and the egg problem, where Darwinex as a marketplace needs good traders to attract investors, and of course it needs investors to convince the good traders to join. And I think that is for the next 18 to 24 months, that is the biggest challenge we're all going to face collectively, to set up the foundation of credibility that's required to establish the independent trader asset class. I think that's a challenge for the next 2 years. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, challenges aside, you've had growth of 2 employees up to 34 in 5 years, so that's quite a nice growth. So obviously you're doing something right. Has there been any point while you've been going through this process of setting up the company that you've just thought the challenge was too great, or have you always been looking forward and you know that you're going to make this in the end?
Yeah, I mean, I think pretty much every week. But you just get used to it and realize that it's all in your head. So you just gotta put the goal and keep going. And when you're feeling good, then you do bigger stuff. And when you're feeling down, then you just do smaller stuff. But the important thing is to keep doing something at all times. So I think that's the recipe for anything in life. Yeah, I'm sure you've faced that with your strategies as well, Martyn.
Sure,
so,
absolutely, day in day out, just like you say, Juan.
Correct. So that's what it is. I mean, I think I'd rather have that than be in a coffin, right? So that's how it works.
Sure, good stuff. Okay, good answer, and thanks for an honest answer. What do you think, Juan, has been the impact of Darwinex so far since you've entered the world of finance as a company? And do you think you've actually achieved what you set out to do yet?
So I look at this not as an end goal, but as a process. I think there's no such thing as the end of this. There's just every step you take, and it might sound like an empty phrase, but there is something to it. So I'll start with your second bit. So have I achieved what I set out to do yet? I think I have, actually, in the sense that I'm obviously working like 70 hours weeks and so on, but there's no denying that I cycle to work every day, and I'm just back from swimming at the swimming pool, and I don't have to tell anybody that I just I go swimming Tuesdays and Thursdays, and because I think that's what I need for my mental health. So that is a gain that I just could not possibly quantify. That's kind of when I start to think of myself. Then there were every now and then you get to meet people like yourself, Martyn, and others who really kind of touch you and make you realize that you've done what you had to do, which was to do some degree of change. So for instance, a couple of weeks ago, I received a letter from a Spanish trader in a very, very small town, like I just wouldn't know where it even is, right? And the guy was really saying, okay, well, guys, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things you need to do better, and there was like 3 pages worth of feedback that he had written on stuff that we had to fix, and he was fully right. I mean, the guy knew our product possibly better than I know it by now. Okay. And he still wrote, but nevertheless, thank you, because you have enabled a trader in a very, very small town who never dreamt it would even be possible to make a living from trading to start considering things seriously. And the guy's got like 10 or 15 investors now. He's a Darwin out there, and on that basis, I mean, that pays for pretty much everything else, because you really know that no matter how small you have achieved to change one guy's life, and now all we keep doing is not, I mean, keep that, but just bring the message out to more people. And I think if we get there, then we'll have done our own contribution to the world of finance, yeah, for the good of traders and investors. I mean, honestly, I don't think as traders we do, or you do, a lot of social value, in the sense that it's all still speculation. But I think there is some transfer, in the sense that the small guys can end up taking the power from the big guys and make the markets fairer. So yeah, that's what makes me get out of bed on a Monday morning, I guess.
Right. Well, that's great. It must be a great feeling to know that you're helping other traders to achieve their goals, and effectively to change their outlook on life and their career prospects as well. So that's really good news. And I think also there's a really good lesson in there for all of us. If a CEO can have a good work-life balance and go swimming during the day and cycle into work and everything else, then there's no excuse for the rest of us. We need to do that as well. So I think you're setting a really good example there, Juan.
Well, actually, I mean, I'm not like I don't consider myself any kind of genius, but I can tell you that I mean, I've always been quite active in terms of sports, but I do this to work better. And I can tell you, whenever I've tried to cut corners and not do it, I have ended up paying a very, very, very high price for that. Eventually, I've had bouts of depression, and I had to, really cope with it. And this is my way of preventing that. So it's not like I'm a very, very clever guy. I just know that you can cut corners short term, but eventually all the chickens come home to roost, and that's not something you really want to be in. I can tell you that.
Sure. No, that's good to know. So, where do you see the company being in 5 years, Juan? I mean, we've seen, we know where you are today. You're a, moderate-sized company now. You've got a growing number of traders, a growing number of investors on the platform. But, be really interested to know in 5-10 years' time where you think Darwinex will be then.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, that's anyone's guess. I think a couple of years ago we weren't even going to be a broker, and then we decided to turn into a broker, and that's just changed a lot of how we see things. So it's very hard to extrapolate what comes out of your bets, but what we haven't changed in the 5 years we've been around is really the mission to empower active investors, and on that basis, I think the world needs a lot more education and people who take their own financial future into their own hands. So when I see, for instance, all this talk about robot advisors that basically pitch the product as, lay back and forget about your financial decisions, we take them for you. That really gives me the shivers, because a society where individual members can't make their own financial decisions, which are one of the most important decisions they have to make, they're not well educated enough, or they're not well engaged enough to take those. That's not going to end up well, really. So on that basis, we'd like to think that empowering people to make their own investment decisions, teaching them to fish, as it were, as opposed to giving them the fish, is a very important contribution that us and others have to do. So on that basis, we'll always cater to the needs of those that really try to make their own decisions and don't take bullshit, and forgive my word for it, from middlemen, and that's the space we want to be in. So be the place where traders feel right at home, and eventually also over time be the place where active investors of other kinds feel right at home. That's where we want to be, and that's what we'll continue going towards. So every decision we make is made with that in mind. So we don't know where we'll end up, but we certainly know where we're trying to go.
Okay, good answer. And I certainly, from my personal perspective and from Trade Signal Machine, I see a part for me to play in that as well, and I'm sure that many of the listeners today also see that they have a part to play in that, in terms of the wider Darwinex community, and collectively, hopefully, we can start to achieve that together. So that's a good answer. Thank you.
And that's a very good point, Martyn. I mean, I think none of what we're doing it can be tackled by any one person, however gifted or ungifted. I mean, this is something which has to really come from within, from a community that is seeking its own personal well-being, but also contributing to a bigger goal, which is to make markets a bit fairer and more democratic. So I think technology started all this, where everybody was given a voice, the possibility of trading, or even the possibility of doing podcasts, right? I mean, what we're doing today would have been unthinkable 20 years ago, like to do a podcast about trading. Like we couldn't A, broadcast, and B, trade. So
Sure.
unless you were working for an institution. And broadly, we like to think of Darwinex not as a company. Of course, we have to pay the bills, and there are 34 jobs at stake here, and a lot of investor monies, including my own. But nevertheless, we like to think of it as a movement that empowers the talent of guys who are perhaps unknown today, but shouldn't be on account of the talent for trading the markets.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, I want to move on a little bit now, Juan, and look at the platform that you have developed as part of your company. Now, I know for a fact that this gives myself and other traders a tremendous amount of insight into their own trading systems and the strategies that they're using. But behind the scenes, I guess that your quants within Darwinex are able to crunch all of the data and get really good insight and intelligence into the way that traders operate in the markets. And I'm sure the listeners would be really eager for you to share anything that you've found, maybe about what the most important traits of successful traders are, and also what the most common issues are and mistakes that traders make that lead eventually to their failure. Have you got any good insights to share with us?
Yeah, I've got one insight, and I mean we've got plenty of insight, but all but one fade into insignificance when compared to the core insight that we've come across. And the core insight is that retail traders or independent traders just trade with too much risk. That's pretty much the long and the short of it. You can look at it any way you want, but the fact is, if you put a monkey to trade who didn't know what he was doing, the worst the monkey could do would be to lose randomly, of course, on account of transaction costs and not knowing what it was doing. And that monkey would beat about 85 to 90% of traders if it wasn't trading with too much leverage. That's basically the long and the short of it. People are a lot of traders come into this. Well, traders are like wannabe traders come into this thinking that it's just going to be a piece of cake. You come in, you read some ebook. What have you. There are different versions of arrogance out there, but the fact is a lot of them come in, they start trading with a ton of leverage. You see the value at risk numbers that they are way too close to 100% really. They can lose anything on a bad month. And the fact is, if you're trading with that level of risk, sooner or later, all the chickens come home to roost. That's really the overwhelming insight. And the mortality rates are so atrocious that most of the life forms, and that's the Darwinex name, never really make it past that stage where you could have known if there was something to the strategy or there wasn't. That's the number one, number two, and number three insight onto this.
Right. Well, that's really interesting, because I know certainly from looking at the analysis that you have openly available on your website, there's a number of traders out there that actually looked like extremely promising traders, and they were doing the right things in terms of their trade entry, their trade exit. Mm-hmm. And absolutely, the only thing really they were doing wrong is they were over leveraging. They were putting too much risk on, and eventually those traders completely obliterated their accounts. Mm-hmm. And you can see that, as you say, if they'd reduced that level of risk, they'd still be trading now, and they'd be trading successfully, and quite possibly would have investors investing in their strategies as well. So I think you've hit the nail on the head, Juan, and it's certainly something that I've recognised by looking at the statistics on your site.
But even that, I mean, that in itself is bear in mind we're talking about a site that doesn't do any advertising, which sources its users from experienced traders who refer other experienced traders, whose invitation is taken up by the guys who really want to have a deeper look into what's going on. So we're talking about a very, very biased sample, and still we're talking about, that's the number one insight. I'd pay to see what the numbers look like for other players in the market where there's other incentives at stake. So yeah.
Good point. Yeah.
So we're talking about the tip of the iceberg, and even then, that's the number one message. Having said that, though, I'd like to make a comment on this, because a lot of people, and especially us in developed markets, think of this as a rational choice. But just imagine you're 21-year-old Chinese student, and you're trading $500, $1,000, and you'll never be in a position to save more than that. So, one way or the other, you're sort of forced as well to take that. It's actually quite human, right, to take that risk and try to turbocharge you're getting to a point where you can make this a living. So I wouldn't say that these people are necessarily, or some of those people are necessarily irrational. There's just being irrational. They're being rational given their own constraints, and it's our task, I think, as Darwinex, to make sure there's enough capital waiting there for them to make a conscious choice and realize that there's a better way. And until we have that offer, which is made overwhelmingly clear, I mean, I'd like to ask people to think twice before jumping to judgments.
Sure. And the capital that you're talking about, of course, there is investor capital. So the fact that people can get in, I think you've called this investor leverage in the past.
Yep.
So they can effectively leverage up their gains and their income because they're getting that investor capital behind them, rather than having to be forced, if you like, to put on silly amounts of money in order to get the same level if they were just trading on their own, under their own steam.
Correct.
Sure. And that brings me on, I guess, nicely to the next question, really, which is around the investor perspective. So the investor side of the Darwinex platform hasn't been around for quite as long as the trader side, but have you managed yet to identify any insights into what investment criteria the most successful investors are using, and what new investors need to focus on most when making decisions themselves about who they should be investing in on your platform to give them the best level of success?
Sure. Yeah, no, on that we have made some promising inroads as well. I think that the number one thing we learned, which sort of came in as a relative surprise in our own naiveness, and this was the fact that that investors really are doing the same mistake as normal retail investors, and that is, I think Peter Lynch once put it very nicely. I think it was a very, very famous investor. He said, "I've made a ton of money through my investments over time, but I doubt any of my investors have made any." And the reason was not that he was scamming them or anything. The reason is that uneducated investors have the tendency to buy financial assets when they're rising and to sell them when they start falling, which is a self-fulfilling losing strategy, as you would expect. And initially we made those. We made those experiences as well. So like Darwins are not different to other financial assets. They're also subject to financial irrational gravity. Think of it that way, and that's what happened. There were traders who were making money, very good money as well, and investors were just managing to time them in the exact opposite manner as to what you would have to do.
Right. Okay.
So correspondingly, though, there's guys in as you can imagine, 35 guys here really believe in the product, and they play around with it quite a bit. And Jesus, whom you may or may not know, who explains the strategy to every trader, has come up with, I think, the most successful strategy to date, which is to essentially back several good Darwins, of the kind of the slow and steady, as I like to call them, one.
Yep.
With about 50% of the capital he's got on the platform, and whenever they go through a large drawdown, he doubles up.
Okay.
big time as well, and he's making very good money on the investor platform in that way. So that's and you can also see that over time the investors who've been in this they're actually learning. So it's nice to see the evolution of the user community as well. And there's also people who started to write blogs and so on to share all those insights. So really, the one advice is pick your couple of first 4 or 5 winners, not more, because at this point I don't think there aren't that many proven traders in Darwinex yet that you could build that portfolio with like 50 different traders. Just pick your 4 or 5 guys, make a very conscious decision as to whom you're sticking with, and then try and stick with them. And whenever they go down, double up. That's that's what's working.
Okay, right. Just one point on that one. Just to be clear, I don't think you're talking here about a sort of a martingale strategy for investors in terms of but doubling up in terms of, well, you're currently experiencing a drawdown, so it's actually a good time to buy because the price is lower, and therefore it's a good time to get in. As with any trading strategy, it's always good to buy on a pullback. I think you're talking about that rather than a continual doubling up.
Of course. I mean, anyways, the risk management algorithms wouldn't allow that, anyways. So that's Sorry. I mean, I guess my thing betrayed me, but I was talking about something which is only possible through us. I'm not talking about a martingale. Totally.
Sure.
No, I mean, in fact, that's another one. There's if you ask me for some of the insights, you wouldn't believe the amount of deceit that goes around with people who try to engineer over the roof and beyond equity curves by doing martingales, and what sort of hate emails we get for our diagnostic toolkit that basically destroys that and shows it for what it is. It's not a small amount. I can tell you there's several a week. Yeah.
Okay. So were you going to say something else, Juan, or?
Yeah, no. The other thing that's been quite interesting is many. Well, I wouldn't say many, but several of the good traders with Darwinex have trend reversal strategies that tend to open the trades at a loss. So they go into the trade, it moves slightly against them, and then it tends to go their way eventually once they hit the bottom. And I was surprised the other day we've got a couple of developers here who have built some bots that let them know once one of the favorite such traders opens a strategy, and once they hit bottom territory, then that's when they buy more. So they're kind of trading the traders in a way.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
Which is fine. As you know, I mean, the intellectual property is safe, and they'll be paying 20% success for any monies they make in doing that. So it's all good on that account.
Sure.
But it's funny how a second layer of management can add additional value on top of what the traders are delivering as well. So I have a lot of hope in what the future holds for the aligned incentive system which we've built, and that's really at the core of what Darwinex makes possible. So it's interesting to see. I think I don't know how it goes in English, but I think it basically says, and relating to movies, right? That you say that reality beats any kind of fiction. So for me, it's been very rewarding to see that people are doing stuff with a platform we've put out there that we hadn't even imagined initially.
Sure.
So it's kind of quite reassuring, to be honest.
Sure. And I get one of the things I get from the platform in terms of the metrics is you mentioned, sometimes it's good to go in a little bit later than the trader goes in, but in itself, your timing investable attribute actually gives traders that information. So it tells them, if you'd have gone in maybe 5%, 10% later than you did, you'd have actually made more money and you'd have been successful. So that's one of the insights certainly that I've got from your platform, and I'm sure other traders have too.
Yeah, no, and the timing is actually one of the attributes that performs quite well. So in the sense that having a high timing grade is a pretty good indication. Having a low timing grade is not a bad indication necessarily, but timing is it tends to correlate with long-term performance.
Okay, that's interesting to know. Thank you. So I think I've almost come to the end of the questions that I have for you. I know I've found speaking with you really interesting, and it's given me a lot to think about. And I certainly think that now I know more about the person Juan, which has been really good for me. Is there anything that you would like to say that you think I've missed? Anything you think the listeners would benefit from today?
No, not at all. I mean, I'd like to thank you for taking the time and giving me the opportunity to speak in this way. And I'd also like to thank you personally, Martyn, because as I mentioned, and today we have thousands of users and actually tens of thousands of users. But back in 2012, I think we had like 30 or 40.
Sure.
And it's great to see that everyone actually of those guys who were with us in the beginning is still around, and at times criticizing us, at times encouraging us, and but at all times part of the movement. So thank you for what it counts. When you asked me if I had achieved what I set out to do, it's I didn't know when I first started, but I think this is one of the more gratifying parts of the job. So thank you for that.
Okay, well, thank you. It's been a pleasure for me to be on the ride, really, of your sort of evolution, and to be with you from the early days. And I've certainly seen the platform change a huge amount in that time, all for the better, really. And it's been really good to play a part in that. So thank you very much for your time today, Juan. Really appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know you're a very busy person. I wish you all the success with your company, and I look forward to seeing Darwinex continue growing into the future. So thank you, Juan.
Thank you, Martyn. But like for the next interview, I'd like you to think of our platform, not mine. I think it belongs to all the users, because they're the ones that populated with insight and really one of the beauties in the shared economy is that our users are our product, and that's what makes it superior to anything else that might be on offer in the kind of 19th century models that still prevail in financial asset management. So I'd like to think of this as our gen product. So don't give me the credit for it. It's credit to the movement. Okay.
Okay. I think that's a great point to finish the interview on. So thank you very much, Juan.
Thank you. Bye bye.